All right, welcome everybody, and welcome back to the Friends of the Cabildo member lecture series. And we are excited this week to talk about some dance halls and everything like that. But we'll give you a quick update on what we've got coming up. This is our last lecture for September, but we have two in October. We're going to get an update on the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the United States of America in 2026, and what is happening on a state level for that commemoration. That is going to be October 10th with Bob Freeland, who's a member of the committee, the Louisiana American 250 Committee. And then on October 17th, we've got Bobby Tickner of the Historic New Orleans Collection. We'll be talking about Gretna native Brigadier General Louis Joseph Fortier during World War II. And that one is on October 17th. So I hope you join us. As always, these are free for members. And then if you're not also aware, we have, I just clicked out. Let a couple more people in. We have our four-part series on the founding of New Orleans that Charles Chamberlain is doing starting Thursday afternoon. He's doing them. Charles is based in Europe, so we do it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's willing to do it at 11 o'clock at night over there, but he's not willing to go much later than that to start. So it's a four-part series. It should probably be about 6.5, 7 hours over 8 hours. As always, we will record them and get them out to you the next morning. So I hope you take advantage of that. Charles is writing a new book on kind of like a beautiful crescent style book about New Orleans founding. So I hope you take advantage of that and check out friendsofthecabildo.org. But tonight we're going to be talking about juke joints and dance halls and juke joints. I was telling Jason we just had a movie on The Roots of Fire last week, which kind of talked a little bit about this. And then when I saw that they were talking about that in that film, I just look forward to this week. Jason is the Chief of Technical Services for the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. So we are excited to welcome tonight and to give us some more information about this topic. Jason, welcome so much.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. I really look forward to talking with you. This is a really fun project that we've been doing for about a year now. So fairly new. It's kind of in its infancy. So hopefully we can move together with this project. As Jason introduced me, so my name is Jason Church. I'm with the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. You'll usually see that written as NCPTT. We are an office of the National Park Service. We are located in Natchitoches, Louisiana. So most of my first half of my presentation will be focused on the work that I started doing as really a grassroots effort in the Natchitoches area. Then we'll talk about some of the work that we've just started doing more in a broad sense around the state. So want to start by saying, so in CPTT, we do a variety of things. And one of them is I have a team that works for me as the Chief of Technical Services. So I don't want anyone to think that this is just me doing this kind of work. Here's my team currently. So there's a lot of us, and we do a variety of things. But for this, what we're talking about is we have a team that goes around and does a digital recording of sites. So we make 3D models, we make photogrammetry tours, we gather oral histories. So we're really interested in both capturing the tangible and the intangible of both of these things. Why is the building important? Usually it's the people, the interaction that made the building important. So we talk about both those things, which is what we try to capture. And you'll see more of that as we go along. And this is an interactive PowerPoint, so there'll be QR codes throughout it where you can go out and look at other things that we're doing and find out other bits of information about the projects and some of the products that we've already made. I saw a chat. Thank you. I'm glad you love Christmas Festival. Please come anytime. I also love Christmas Festival in Natchitoches, so I'm always excited when people come. All right, so this started when I ran across the Louisiana Dance Hall database. This is on University of Louisiana Lafayette's website. This is run by Pud Sharp. Great work that he's doing trying to document the dance halls and juke joints. And so for those who don't know, a dance hall is generally a much larger space designed exactly for that. It was usually purpose built for dancing. So usually a bar on one side, or restaurant attached, or food venue, but a small stage and then a large area to dance. A juke joint is usually a much smaller structure. We're still interested in places that had live music. So dance halls, juke joints, we'll kind of throw those words around both because we're interested in both of them. And both of these are sites that had live music. Generally, juke joints were very small. Maybe they were a repurposed building. So maybe it was a store, maybe it was a house, barbershop, could have been anything that maybe is always a juke joint. Maybe it's only a juke joint on the weekend. Maybe Friday nights are the only times a juke joint. It's a grocery store the rest of the week. Or a bookstore, they push things back. I know of a current one that's the case. So we got interested in trying to document and look up for the dance hall database. And I noticed, me and Natchitoches, I'd heard of lots of them, and there were only a few listed. So I wanted to know more about what was in my own hometown, my current town, sorry, and more interest in that. So I got really interested in sort of looking around, and this is one of our most famous. This was Baba's, a gentleman named Baba Matwire ran it, and Mr. Matwire unfortunately didn't pay his taxes, and it was sold at tax sale and closed down about 2017. So I had moved to Louisiana. I was interested in this. I'd heard about it, but by the time I had heard about it, they had just closed. Well, the people who bought it with the intent of closing it for good. So 2017 is the upper photograph. That's when it's out of commission. It's been sold. You see how quickly in 2019 it's grown up. And in 2020, they burned it to the ground. The current owners burned it for the purpose of, they wanted it out. They didn't like the traffic. They didn't like the noise. They wanted to get rid of the site. So that really pushed me to realize, all right, if I'm going to do this kind of research, I need to get on it, because these places are being lost very quickly. The other one that really spurred me into action was in 2021, tornadoes came through Alexandria, Louisiana, and this is what's left of the Oriental, which was a hotel listed on the Green Book. And this was the Show Society dance hall. This was a club that was at the bottom of the Oriental. And this is when hurricane cut through, knocked the back of the side of the building off. I was able to get in, get a few photographs. And then the city came in and demolished both blocks, this entire block and the block adjacent, across the street from it, rather, because they were just, barely hanging on. They'd been abandoned for years. And that's really what pushed me to realize, all right, I'm running out of time. If we're going to do this research, we have to do it now. So I guess some positive came out of losing these structures to really make us realize, we had to get in gear before there was nothing left for us to research. So we started by doing archival research, looking in the Cammy Henry collection, looking in the local library, and honestly, we weren't finding anything. We found no references. Every once in a while, there might be a crime report that mentioned, but for the most part, we found nothing. So where were these places? Who was going there? Who was playing there? We were finding nothing. So this is one of the last buildings still standing in the Cane River area. This is called the Friendly Place, or sometimes referred to as Woods Hall. Wood Ante is the gentleman who built it and owned it, but its a real name is the Friendly Place. So the Friendly Place is still standing, precariously, but it is still standing. And this was a really important aha moment for us when we were interviewing the family, and you'll see some pictures later, and I'll re-mention this site. Architecturally, it's a really neat site, and it was open until about to the early 2000s is when this closed. And one of the things that we're interested in is, if you look at the longer photograph of it, you'll see the sign. This is the Friendly Place, and there's two ghost marks on either side. Those ghost marks correlate with my other photograph. They were two chalkboards. So when we were interviewing them, I asked them, what was on these two squares? And they said, oh, that's the chalkboard inside. They took me in, and they said, this is where we wrote who was playing on the weekend. So it made me realize we weren't going to find anything in the archives. They never ran ads in the paper. They never ran, anything. So there's no archival evidence of these places ever existing. This was totally word of mouth. You would go out and you would write the next band, maybe what you were serving on the weekend food wise, maybe the beer special for the week, and you would write the band on the other side, and people would talk and they would tell each other, they would call each other, hey, such and such is opening, we should go down. And they said the only time they ever ran is if someone really famous, for example, Fats Domino did play at this place, at the Friendly Place. When he did, they ran an ad on the radio. Well, of course, those don't exist anymore. So we realized archival research was out. So how do we find out about these lost juke joints and these lost dance halls that are now gone? Well, we decided we had to go to the patrons, to the owners, to the musicians, and we started going on a juke joint hunt. And we started a video series. I've got a couple up and quite a few getting ready to come out. Started a video series that I like to call Riding in Cars Looking for Bars. So we set a GoPro camera up and we found these gentlemen, men and women, who had been patrons of these places. People who like to drink, who like to go out and listen to music. And they were doing it 40, 50 years ago. And we started driving around and just saying, tell us what a Friday night was like. Tell us where you went on a Saturday night. So we literally started driving around, and you see Mr. Alton Ray in the top photograph, kind of pointing, oh, well, turn here. Oh, this was such and such club. And I go another couple blocks, stop here. And he was able to start locating places for us that are just vacant lots. So we were able to start finding where a lot of these places were located by literally driving around looking for bars. Then we started finding out who had owned the places and doing interviews with him, like Dan W. in the middle photograph. He owned a place called the Sportapack. Interviewing him, who played there, what was the clientele like? What were the bands that you frequented? And then interviewing the musicians, which was really helpful. A lot of the musicians couldn't remember the names of some of the places, but they could tell us when they played, who else played, what the atmosphere was like, what it looked like, and kind of where it was. Most of them said, oh, you should ask us 10 years ago. We could have told you the names of all of them. But we have what we had to work with. And a lot of the interviewers that we interviewed have already passed away, unfortunately. Oswald Colson, who I'm with in the photograph, looking at a photograph in the van, he's already passed. Hardrick Rivers, who's in the lower middle photograph, he's already passed. So we were really lucky. We were racing against time, not only to interview the musicians, but also to find the places before they're lost. Then we started gathering archival materials, mostly from the musicians. We were lucky that some of them had recorded some of their shows. So we were able to get, and of course, these are much later shows. You can see the dates on there, 2005, 1999, but still very important. Both of these places that they recorded at are long gone. So it was great to be able to get those concerts. And from that, and of course, asking for photographs. And I'll mention that some more. So the dance hall database that Pud Sharp runs at ULL had about 5 places listed for Natchitoches. So as of right now, this is my list. So downriver, I mentioned the Friendly Place. Babuzz, I mentioned. You'll see later, Kirkland's Hall was a very large dance hall where some very famous people did play. And then others that we found evidence of and we've been able to locate. And now that's just considered downriver. In the city, and this is kind of what threw us back, the downriver ones a lot of people talked about. It's really deeply rooted in the Creole culture along the Cayman River. So those were really easy. What we didn't know about and no one had documented were juke joints and a few dance halls actually located in the city. So here's our list. The list goes on and on. Right now, we're at about 58 places here in the parish. And all of these were unique. Some of them changed names. I've noted that if they have, but all of these were unique places. Campty in the Black Lake area, also here in Natchitoches Parish. And one of them, the Black Lake Club, for me was known as Sea and Sirloin. It was a steakhouse. It's still there. It's closed again. Reopened very briefly as LA Steakhouse. It's closed again. But that was a club. That was a large, with a very large dance floor. And we're just now started going out of into the more rural areas of Natchitoches Parish. So a lot of places. And it really shocked us. And a lot of these were open at the same time. So we easily had 20, 30, live music venues surviving at the same time, which, now we only have a couple that play live music on occasion. So it was crazy to think there was this many live places. And some of them were very large. Some of them we've been told seated 200 and 300. So it was crazy to think we don't have anywhere in Natchitoches that is this large anymore. And it really is this sort of grassroots effort of, finding musicians, finding bar patrons, and really starting to research this and then correlating it. Well, we've got 4 or 5 stories on the same place. That's fact checking for me. And then one of the things that we did, and this is of course all free, is to start to develop a map of these juke joints through Google Maps. So you can go on Google Maps and make your own tours. So all the little blue spots are ones that we know it was located there. So we've proven it either through, at least 5 interviews. We've proven it through sandboard maps. We've proven it through, some sort of paper trail, or found the owners. So this gives you an example of kind of where they were clustered in the neighborhoods. But we were able to make a Google Map tour, and we're working still to add more to this all the time. And a lot of the buildings we found have been repurposed. So the building's still there, but of course it's not what it was anymore. My favorite one is called the Red Hut. It was originally built as the Red Hut. It was a rib place that also played live music. It was changed later to the Gentleman's Contemporary Club, and now it's a small engine repair shop. And if you look at the lower photograph, it still has the Gentleman's Contemporary Club logo was painted on the wall, and this was actually behind a shelving unit. The owner moved it for us and was like, "Oh, this is what you're interested in." So he drug it out so that we could see the original logo that was still there. All right, so one person asked, are the clubs typically segregated? Yes. So most of these clubs were so in Natchitoches Parish, they were segregated in 3 ways. You had white-only clubs, you had black-only clubs, and then you had Creole clubs. And for the most part, for most of our oral histories, Creoles were welcome at any of the clubs, whereas, the white and black clubs were pretty much strictly that. Some of the clubs, I mentioned the Sportapack earlier. I think I have a photograph of that. I think I have a photograph of that next. The Sportapack actually was separated where it was a white-only club, but they had a black-only entrance on the side where you could come in and you stayed behind a cage on one side where you could come in, buy alcohol, buy food. You could hear the music, but there was nowhere to sit down. You sort of stayed in a very small segregated area. We only know of 2 that were segregated in that way. The other was the White Elephant Club in Ploutryville, and they had a white-only entrance and a black-only entrance. But we've done at least a half dozen interviews that said you had to go in the white-only or you had to go in the black-only entrance. There's 2 doors in the front, but once you got inside, there were no dividers. So everyone mingled freely, and it was a completely integrated club. But when you came and when you left, you had to go out those doors. But otherwise, the club itself was completely mixed inside. And one of the things is finding some of these locations that they're nothing now, they're closed up, but sort of investigating to find remnants of the signage that's in the window or the ghost sign of what the sign of the building had once been. Here's a couple of examples. Freddy's was a renowned barbecue and hamburger joint that, believe it or not, played live music. It's hard to believe a building that small was really well known for having bands. The Sportapack, which I mentioned earlier, that was open until the 2000s. but originally was built in about 1960. That was the one I mentioned, had a black only door on one side. Blue Light Inn, again, being able to kind of look in the windows and seeing the beer ads. What I would have thought was maybe a house, because this is totally in a neighborhood, until you realize it only has one window, and that window is littered with beer ads and no loitering, no drinking outside signs. So trying to see those ghost images. The Roebling Street Club is another example. It's not very large. And I was told usually the band would play inside, they would open doors, prop them open, and the party would actually go outside. It was cooler. Everyone could listen to music and drink just in the yard around it while they played in the music inside. And then Bio Jacko's was a club at night, integrated restaurant during the day. And one of the musicians that we interviewed said it was the only place in this whole region that, as a kid being white, he could go in and listen to black music. So him and his brother had a tape recorder. They would put their money in the jukebox. They would listen to all the Sam and Dave records, and they would actually record them on their tape player that they would hide in their jacket, go home and memorize all the songs. And then they were hired to come back and play clubs, because they were able to play all the latest Sam and Dave songs. So the only place they could listen to them or find them was by going to Bio Jacko's, which was an integrated restaurant. And then, of course, finding the location of what's left. Being able, so example of Willie's in the lower photograph, there are some vent studs that come out of the ground right there in the middle of this field. That's where the gas pumps were. And you sort of see some gravel looking area. That's actually asphalt left from the location. So we know that was where the gas pumps were. Willie's was a gas station that also served as a juke joint at night. So trying to find those. The silver slipper, it's hard to see, that's a bunch of briars, but the pillars, concrete pillars that held the building up, are still in all of that before that one burned. And then really leaving no stone unturned. I have to point out, so the gentleman in the middle, that's Sukrit San. He is holding the sign up that we found. This was in a scrap wood pile. This is the original, the last Sportapack sign. This is when it was much later. This is a sign from the 80s, but the last sign from it was on a scrap pile. But we found that, and Sukrit was really instrumental in starting this project with me. He was a U.S. Ecomos intern who came to do documentation, but he is a musician from India, and he got really interested in, well, where did people play music? What was the music like? So that's really what started this project into doing a lot of the research, was through Sukrit. And also just finding out, asking people for photographs and saying, it doesn't have to be this gorgeous photograph, of a perfect layout. Any photograph works for us. And this is a great example. I had someone email me on Facebook and say, well, I have a picture of my husband when we first started dating, and we used to go drinking at this one club. Is that something you'd be interested with? And I said, absolutely. Photographs inside clubs don't exist. People didn't take them. It was really, a lot of times I was told the bouncers would take the camera from me, pull the film out. This, photographs inside clubs just don't exist. And so this is a photograph. This is in the 90s. So not an old photograph, but a really important one, because if you look above her future husband, you will see all sorts of clothing hanging from the rafters. And that was one of the oral histories we had over and over, that this club had a reputation. If you wanted, your football team or your baseball, your church softball league, you wanted them to sponsor you, or you wanted to, you were claiming that was your territory. This is the place you guys drank. You could hang your shirt up. The other thing is, you'll notice other types of clothing that you could, get up on the bar, remove clothing, and that would get everyone a free round in the bar. So there's lots of undergarments, bras, things like that hanging up. That's from that tradition. And of course, one of the things that we talked to the owner of this place, they said that tradition died, and they actually closed the bar once cell phones started coming out, because it ruined the fun. you and maybe 10 of your friends were out drinking, you got on the bar, you took your shirt off, everyone cheered, you got hanging on the rafter, they would give you another shirt, and that was sort of the tradition, and it was fun and games. They said, but as soon as people started bringing phones out and taking pictures, the fun ended. It was now proof it wasn't fun anymore. And he said they pretty much, a lot of people stopped coming to the bars when people were always on their phone taking pictures and trying to post them. That was one of the things that has come up repeatedly that has been the reason for the downfall and the decline of a lot of these juke joints and dance halls. So I'm going to end this. Like I said, this has really been a grassroots effort. So we're looking for photographs. We're wanting to talk to bartenders, waitresses, bouncers, musicians, more locations, more stories. We're really hungry for it. This is a great story. This is a mom gave me this. She said, well, it's the only picture we've got of the inside of our dance hall is picture of some of my kids asleep. And it really was hilarious because we were excited about this picture because we had interviewed some musicians who had told us, there was this one crazy dance hall that we used to play at that they let their kids in. What was up with that? And we were like, we have stories. We have stories about these kids. And they said it was crazy. Everyone's drinking and fighting, and you'd look under the tables and along the benches, there'd be all these little kids asleep. So we had proof of this story by this one photograph that they thought, I don't know you'd want it because it's of some kids, but this was a perfect photograph to go along with some of the oral histories we had heard. So here's some of the documentation we've done. This is Rock's Grocery. It was built as a grocery store. And eventually, as bigger grocery stores were built in the area, it turned into just a liquor store, and then a bar, and then eventually turned into a pool hall and live music. So it's sort of the evolution from the 20s all the way up to just a few years ago when they stopped playing live music. So we did a 3D laser scan. So we have a full 3D model of the building. And we did what's called Matterport. If you click on that QR code, you get some time later, you can actually take a 3D walkthrough tour of Rock's Grocery and see where the bands played, see all of the little signs on the walls and things like that. So you can do an in-depth 3D model tour of it yourself. Another thing, of course, I talked about, we're capturing the tangible and the intangible. This is Shannon Rock, the current owner, and that QR code will take you to YouTube to an interview with Shannon about owning it, growing up in it. His dad and his uncle started it, hearing what it was like growing up and how the evolution of that as a grocery store to a blues hall to now just a pool hall. So very interesting way to sort of capture that. So I'm going to move past that. So that was sort of our grassroots effort. That's what we started with. That's what we're still working on. But most of that is, completely just oral histories, Google Maps, very low key. Well, we're NCPTT Technology Center. So this is sort of our next phase. So this is Hamilton's Place in Lafayette, famous dance hall in Lafayette. It is currently closed, but the family sort of locked the door and walked away. Everything's still there. So it was the perfect venue for us to try out our newest type of documentation. So we went in, we photographed it. We took photographs all around, documenting the graffiti that was in there. The ceiling has graffiti all over. It's wonderful. Scanning the family's photographs. We did oral histories with the owner. So these sisters own the place. The three sisters own it. We did oral histories with them about owning it, about living there and growing up in it. It's a multi-generational dance hall. And what that was like. That's Pud Sharp in the middle. He was doing the interview for us because he already knew them. And just really great getting that intangible history of this building. Then we decided to bring some technology into it. So what we're doing is we're actually working with Utah Valley. It's a college, Utah Valley University in, of course, in Utah. They have a sound engineering program. So this goes beyond the work that we do. We do 3D modeling. We do photogrammetry, but we haven't done any of this. So what they're doing is actually setting up arrays. So they set up a whole speaker system. They release sound waves into it And as that bounces back and gets collected by these speakers, it gives an acoustic signature. So it was really important. We needed what we call a live building, a building that still has the tables and chairs and the bar and the stage and all those things that it had when it was a live building. All of those make up the acoustic signature. So how would music sound being recorded and being played in Hamilton's place? So that's what we did. So I'm going to play a real short video. There's some, if anyone has sound issues or gets triggered by really crazy noises, you might want to mute for a second. But this is what the sound array sounds like. Oh, it's not going to play. Oh, I'm so sorry. Played in practice. I apologize. All right. It sounds like whales. So it makes this just horrible high-pitched squeaking noises and whale noises coming out of the speakers that we've set on the stage, coming back. And as that bounces around, these Sputnik-looking microphones, the microphones we have all around, gives us that acoustic signature. We can take that acoustic signature and we can apply it to recordings that are already done to make them sound like they were recorded or sound like they would have been played in Hamilton's place. I'll get back to why we care about that. The next thing we did was bring in a musician. So for Hamilton's place, we brought in Zydeco legend Corey Ledet. Corey gave us a concert, just us technicians, and we recorded his concert with the speakers. So we captured the sound of it. We also did it in 360 video. So we set up cameras. You can sort of see one on a tripod right in front of him. It's a large sphere. That's a sphere that's completely surrounded by lenses. That's a 360 camera. So we recorded him in 360, high def 360 of him recording, of him playing. And the reason that we're doing this is we want to be able to hold concerts. Eventually, this is our next phase, to be able to take the 360 model we've made of Hamilton's place, the acoustic signature we have of Hamilton's place, and be able to put those into the metaverse and actually have concerts virtually. So in virtual reality, you can walk through, you can experience what an original Cajun dance hall sounds like, what a real, Zydeco dance hall would be, and let people walk around and then listen to a concert as it would sound actually being played in the real dance hall, which unfortunately is closed and will not have live music in it ever again. So once we did Hamilton's place, we also went down to La Poussière down in Grove Bridge. Fantastic place. If you've never had a chance, please go. It's still a live dance hall. They still play music every Friday night, every Saturday night. Fantastic Cajun bands, Zydeco, Cajun, the whole gamut, really great music. But this is still an active dance hall. So we wanted to also record one that was still a happening place. So you see Emily with a drone there. We did 360 photography. So we did a full 3D model of La Poussière from photogrammetry from the air. Then we recorded it inside. We did a full scan inside. We did it with 360 photography so that we can, again, build this place in a virtual. Then we brought in musicians to play. Again, we did the same thing. We did a sound sweep. We recorded, and this is our website. I should have turned into a QR code. I apologize. But this is the start of the website. If you go to that, this is the beginning. Now, we just did this work, so the website's new, and that's the capstone project for 2 students from Utah Valley University. So we're working with that to be able, the next phase we'll post is the 360 videos so that you can actually interact with them in 360. So you can walk around in virtual reality into these places. All right, so that's kind of it. This is our Instagram. Feel free to come follow us. This is NCPTT. We usually post daily what we're doing, so you can see us in the field doing research live. We do a wide variety of documentation, dance halls being only one of the many things that we document. So we do lots of digital recording of buildings, oral histories, historic preservation work, a wide variety. I think we were just out doing ground penetrating radar looking for lost cemeteries just a few days ago. So big team, lots of work going on. And like I said, we try to post daily from Instagram where we are and what we're doing. So that's the best way to sort of keep up with us and ask us questions. And this is me. Feel free to drop me an email anytime. If you have any questions or want to know more about it, I'm always happy to chat. All right, got at least one question.
Yeah, we've got a couple questions there, and I've got a couple questions to ask. But if you want to go those last two there, I'd love to hear the answers to both of those.
Someone said, seriously love that our tax dollars went toward you driving around looking for bars. This is true. Looking for hubs of cultural significance is what we like to say. Of course, we never went to any while they were currently open or actively open. So we sort of skirted around that. But one of the gentlemen asked me, he said, how do you get a job where you legitimately just go around looking for juke joints? And I said, well, somebody's got to do it because no one else is recording these, and we're losing them every day. So, other questions?
There was a question about are these wonderful places lost because local people migrated to other parishes or states, or what's the? I mean, I'm sure it's all over the map because you've got all these different things, but
I've not seen that. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. There's definitely a generational, if the generations keep it up, kids keep going. But I think a lot of times what happens is when there's that break, we're not taking our kids there anymore kind of thing. Then there is that loss. And so when people move away, there's that break. I grew up, I'm from the mountains of North Carolina. I grew up doing sort of flat foot dancing and going to what are called contra dances. And of course, I've never taken any of my kids to those places because I don't live there anymore. So my children they've been to Zydeco and Cajun dance halls, but they've never been to North Carolina mountain ones with bluegrass because we don't live there. So that would make sense that a lot of these traditions got lost as people moved around. A lot of the people we've talked to, I hate to say it, it sounds really weird, but a lot of people told us cell phones is why they stopped. It ruined the fun. People didn't like it. They got self-conscious about dancing because people were taking pictures and things like that. And also you lose the plausible deniability clause of being at a place and having fun. Well, my second cousin's roommate said they saw you. Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, actually, here's a picture of you. That changes a lot of people's experience and enjoyment of a lot of these places. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Something we don't think about, but I think that has a lot to do with it. And if you look, the 90s are when a lot of these places went out. I think it has a lot to do with it.
The restaurant sport, I mean, the dance hall Sport-A-Pack was one that I just found interesting. Did you guys, what was with the names of some of these? I mean, obviously a place called Friendly's Bar or Freddy's is an unusual, but there were some really, really unusual names there. What's with the story on some of these names?
That is a question that I think has been lost. I think that have to go back to the original owner. Sport-A-Pack comes from, getting a package of alcohol. It was originally just a package store. So that's where that came from. But yeah, the Flamingo Club. Now, a lot of the names like Zeno's and stuff, we find out, oh, well, the guy's name was Zeno that owned it. A lot of the numbers, like the, 21 Club and the, 74 Club, those were the roads they were on. And that was, that even hit me. I was like, well, 21 Club, because you had to be. They're like, no, they're on Highway 21. Oh, well, of course. That's Route 74. That's why it's 74 Club. Like, oh, got it. So a lot of the 72 Club, I think, was one of them. So a lot of those we do know came from the roads they were on. But yeah, like the Pink Flamingo. There was one, the Pink Panther, that I'm still trying to find out information about. So I know the one that was called the Pink Panther was out in Zawali, and evidently it was a large house painted bright pink. So I don't know if the paint came first, the name came from that, or the name came first, and that caused the paint job. I think that's been lost to history.
you mentioned that a couple were like barbecue restaurants or hamburger joints or something like that. Were most of them side operations? So that basically would like say they were a barbecue restaurant, but on Friday and Saturday night it was a dance hall, and that's just what they were. I mean,
Yes.
or there's some that were just plain dance halls, or it's just a mix and match.
Well, it's all the above. So, yes, there were definitely places that were restaurants first, and then Friday and Saturday nights, you could go drinking there. And they would have live music to bring people in. And a lot of those, I've been told, most places serve some food because if you didn't serve food, you had to close at a certain time. If you serve food, you could stay open later.
Gotcha.
So, the owner might cook it at home and bring it in and say, well, we're serving food, but we don't actually cook food here. And that was the case with a couple of them. There's not room for, where was the kitchen? Oh, there was never a kitchen. They drove it in. They cooked it at home, brought it in. So there's that. Some of them were hotels. Some of them were grocery stores, and they just slid everything back. They pushed all the shelving to one side, and then on Friday night, Saturday night, Thursday night, it became a club. Some of them, we interviewed some that were, like I said, they were hotels that had sort of the office, the middle room became the club, and definitely there was spillage over to hotel business from the club, but yeah, I think a lot of them, and then some of the bigger ones like some of the clubs in the Fiesta Club in Natchez, Kirkland's Hall, the Buzz, they also had horse tracks associated with them and baseball fields. So there was a whole community baseball that happened at these places, and that was really a Sunday thing. The horse racing as well. So you had gambling, you had drinking, you had free, you had live music. So it was really sort of an industry. A lot of these places were definitely multi faceted places. So Andy asked, how helpful were Sanborn maps in your research? Not real helpful because most of these places weren't in town. Now, we did find some that were in town. A lot of them, they were on the backside of places. So you might have a restaurant on the main street, but the backdoor entrance was listed as something else. So that told us, that the back door is where you went in for live music, maybe just one night a week. And we found a couple of clubs like that were listed, but most of the time these were out of the downtown. These were actually in the residential areas. These were in what are now just residential streets. And a lot of them had been houses that just turned into a house party, turned into a regular event, turned into a dance hall, a juke joint that started serving food.
One more question I'm gonna ask was in Louisiana, does it have some areas that are larger than others, or is it just also just all there's just spotted here or there, there's a random place?
Could you repeat the whole question? You broke up at the beginning.
Oh, what's the current state of dance halls in terms of active ones? I mean, you mentioned there was one in Lafayette that was still around, but I mean, is it just here and there? There's a random one.
There are still quite a few, but really there aren't any that I know of, sort of up in the North Louisiana. But traditional dance halls, yeah, there are definitely some, Mamou, Iowa, Lafayette, Breaux Ridge, sort of that region still has some pretty well known active dance halls, and we think there's probably about 15 or a little less in the whole state still open. There's only one really traditional juke joint still open. It's a place called Teddy's. It's in Zachary. So we think about 15 historic. Now, this doesn't include like corner bars in New Orleans or even there's a couple of corner bars in Shreveport that have been around for a long time. But traditional, what we would consider a dance hall, there's less than 15 left in the state, and most of them are around that same area, around like sort of the Lafayette, Breaux Ridge, Mamou area.
Jason, I want to thank you so much for talking to us tonight, and we look forward to more research that you guys are going to be doing. The work you're doing is amazing, and we couldn't be happier that you guys are documenting such a rich culture and trying to keep it alive for people to learn from it. So I want to thank you so much for speaking tonight, and we look forward to seeing what you're doing next.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. Thanks for having us. And like I said, we're really interested in trying to record, vernacular structures and record, just really working class, buildings, houses. Where did we work? Where did we live? Where did we enjoy ourselves? That's a story that just isn't being told as much, and we're really interested in trying to capture that before it's gone.
Keep up the good fight. We appreciate all you guys are doing, and I want to thank everybody for being here tonight and who's
Thank you.
watching the recording. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in October.
All right.
Thanks, Jason.